Hey, good morning, guys. Happy Tuesday. Uh, in the last 2 weeks of the school year, I want to focus on factoring. So we've been multiplying binomials, x plus 2, x minus 3 with our foiling method. But I want to get from x squared minus x minus 6, I want to get from there to our factored form. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with identifying a greatest common factor. And that's just the biggest number that I can divide out of both of the given numbers. And what we're going to do is we're going to break those numbers down into their prime factors. We're going to break them down into prime numbers. And then we're going to circle all the stuff that they have in common. Then we're going to multiply those numbers together. So what that looks like here is I've got 8 and 20. And we're just going to break these down until we can't break them down any farther. So what numbers multiply to get 20? Well, 1 and 20, but I could also have 2 and 10, or 10 and 2. And 2 is a prime number, so I'm done with that. But what numbers multiply to get 10? Well, 5 and 2 multiply to get 10. And the only numbers that multiply to get 5 are 1 and 5. The only numbers that multiply to get 2 are 1 and 2. So I'm done. Those are all my prime numbers. So we're going to be looking at these numbers here. And for 8 and 1, 4 and 2, and then I'll break this 4 down into 2 times 2. So these are the numbers I'm going to work with from 8. Now, we're going to circle what do they have in common. Well, they've got 2 2's in common. They've got 2 2's in common. And that's it. Other than that, we've got a 5 and we've got a 2. So our GCF, our greatest common factor, is going to be 2 times 2. We're going to multiply those common factors together. So 2 times 2, our GCF is 4. So we broke it down into all its prime factors. We circled what they had in common. Circled what they have in common at the end of these trees. And then we multiplied 2 times 2. Let's try a couple more. GCF of 10 and 25. 10 and 25. Well, 25 is 25 times 1 and 5 times 5. And 10 is 1 and 10, 2 and 5. And 2 and 5 are both prime numbers, so let's just circle what they've got in common then. Well, they have 1 5 that's in common. So when I do this multiplication, I'm only going to look at one of my factors here. So here I circled 2 2's in each one of these groups. So I'm only going to look at one part when I get to this last step. So you'll notice I didn't multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. I only looked at one of these two factor trees and I said I've got 2 2's in each. So here I've only got 5. There's nothing else circled in this one factor tree. So my greatest common factor is just 5. I don't have to multiply it by 5 because you're only going to focus on one of these two factor trees once you're done. And it doesn't matter. I could have looked at the other one. I could have said, well, let's focus on this one. And I did the same answer, because I've only got one number circled here, and that number is 5. Alright, let's do 6 and 21. So 6, 1 and 6, 3 and 2, 21 is 1 and 21, and 7 and 3. And these are all prime numbers. I can't break them down any farther. So what I'll do is I'll circle those things they've got in common. And then again, I'm only going to focus on one of these two sets. And the only thing circled in here is 3. So my greatest common factor is 3. And let's do our last two. 9 and 15 and 7 and 14. So 9 and 15 and 7 and 14. So 15, I can do 1 and 15, 3 and 5. 9 is 9 and 1, 3 and 3. So these are all prime numbers here. Can't break those down any farther. So let's circle what they've got in common. Well, they've got a 3 in common. And again, we're just going to focus on one of these numbers, and it doesn't matter which one. I could focus on this one if I really wanted to. I could focus on the 15 if I really wanted to. But we're going to notice what's circled in each group. Well, each group only has 3 circled. So my greatest common factor is going to be 3. And for 7 and 14, 7 is already prime, 7 and 1. And 14 is 7 times 2. So, these are all prime numbers. Let's circle what they got in common. Well, they've got a 7 in common. So again, we're going to focus on just one of these two groups. And I'm going to look at what is circled in this group. Well, just 7. So my greatest common factor is 7. And a nice trick that you can use is you can always take the smaller number and see if it goes nicely into the larger number. And if it does, then your smaller number is the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor of 6 and 12, well, 6 goes into 12 twice. So since 6 goes into 12 nicely, then the GCF is 6. And we could do our method of breaking this down. Well, this would be 3 times 2, and the 12 would be, let's see, 6 and 2 and 2 and 3. So if I really wanted to break these down, then I'm going to look at what do they have in common. Well, they got a 3 in common, and they've got a 2 in common. And again, I'm just going to focus on one of these two groups here. I'm going to say, what do they got in common here? Well, they've got a 2 and a 3 in each group. So I'll take my GCF. It's going to be 2 times 3, which would be 6. So I hope you guys have a fantastic day. As always, email me with any questions you've got. And we'll come back here tomorrow, ready to do some more greatest common factors, but with polynomials. So we'll see you then.